Hello, I'm Commander Chris Kreitline, U.S. Navy retired. I've made several videos on YouTube on how to do celestial navigation, and this evening I'd like to make a video for you describing how to put together the sextant. These sextants are from Germany. They are printed on hard paper, a sort of cardboard for the purchaser to put together. I've sold several of these to people at the boat show and on the internet, and I wanted to put a video on YouTube to describe how to put one together because they are a little tricky, and it's very important that you put it together properly so that it'll function. If you do put it together properly, it works extremely well. It is a sextant made out of this paperboard. It will give you the degrees and the minutes of the angle between the horizon and the heavenly body, just like any other sextant. But like I said, it's a little tricky to put it together, so I thought a video would help people. So let me continue. They do come from Germany. The instructions are, fortunately, written in English. Rather extensive instructions, as you can see. And it does tell you how to do it. But it might be helpful to have somebody show you if you're trying to do it yourself. You're going to need some equipment when you're doing it. You're going to need some glue, and I just used this regular Elmer's type glue from Walmart. It's washable and it does a good job. The instructions encourage you to use a solvent-based glue, but I don't really believe that's necessary. Let's face it, the thing is made out of paper, so you don't want to get it wet anyway. So this ought to do the trick. You'll want a couple nail files for the sandpaper effect. You'll want a X-Acto knife to trim, a black magic marker, and you'll want a very small felt-tipped marker that's capable of writing on glass or metal. Once again, you can just buy those at Walmart very cheaply. Okay, that's there might be a few other things that you need as we go through here. I like to have a wet paper towel to wipe my hands on when I'm using the glue, because I press parts together. You might want a wet paper towel. You might want a piece of paper, piece of cardboard, or something that you can work on, particularly if you're going to be using the knife to cut things. Okay, so that's really about all you need. So read through the instructions very carefully to try to get a general idea of what you're going to be doing, but I will describe it. Here is one of the sextants, or here is the sextant that is almost completed. There's another little piece of work that needs to be done, and that is the final adjustment. And I've not done it on this sextant because I specifically wanted to be able to show you what is necessary to make the final adjustment. So I've saved that till after I make this video. So as you step through the instructions, what you're going to be doing is, first of all, punching out the main piece in this big gap here on the two sheets. You'll be gluing those together very carefully. You probably want to put them on a flat surface and put a couple books on top of them to dry out. Then as you follow through the instructions, in many cases it will have you punching out pieces and actually gluing them together to make a support. So that is not always very clear in the instructions, so let me describe it. For example, in these two spaces right here, you punch these out and it comes apart into 4 pieces. Well, you'll put the pieces back to back, the white pieces back to back, glue them together. Then there'll be two black pieces and you glue them on the two white pieces that you've glued together. So you'll have a piece that has 4 layers, and that's to give it more strength. Those are for the support brackets, for example. So you do that several times through here. So try not to be too confused about that when they have you do it. Okay, so let's get back to the sextant. You'll put together the main body of the sextant with the arc in 2 pieces that you glue back to back. Here's what the back side of it looks like, very similar to the front side. There are little grooves in it where you have to put other pieces later on, so you'll have to punch those things out or cut them out with your X-Acto knife. Now what I do is I take this little emery board and sand off some of the tiny little tabs where it is connected to the paper board, just to make it a little smoother, maybe glue together a little better, and maybe look a little nicer by sanding off all those little tabs. One thing that's interesting here is the filter that goes on the sextant. Once again, it's a case of where it's made up of 3 different, well actually 4 pieces if you count the filter. But in the instructions, as you read it, you'll see that you glue one to one piece, and then later you'll glue another piece onto it to make it stronger. So that's the objective there. And that this piece you do pretty early in the ball game. One piece that needs to be explained is where the swing arm pivots up here. There'll be a hole in the body of the sextant, in the body of the frame, so to speak. Then there'll be a round piece that fits in that. You'll want to sand that off to make sure it turns smoothly. This is a critical point. If you don't do that, your sextant swing arm may not turn at all. It may be too tight in there. Actually, I think mine is a little too tight. I would appreciate it being a little more loose, a little looser. But I'm sure being a little tight is better than being too loose, because at least this will hold its position after I take a sight. If you get it too loose, it may flop around, and then you'll have trouble reading, taking the reading of your sextant height. So up here at the top, you'll have a round disc. So sand it off and test fit it many times. After you glue the 2 parts of the frame together, then you want to test fit that disc up here. Test fit it until it's, you know, the best that you can get it by once again sanding around the disc with your emery board. Then when you get it in there, then when you get it how you like it, you must very carefully take the swing arm that you've punched out here, put glue in the middle of that disc, and glue the swing arm down onto it. Now be careful that you don't let the glue get beyond that disc onto the frame, or it may glue the whole thing together, and then you got a real problem. So follow the instructions, be very careful, only put glue carefully on that disc, and then you'll attach the swing arm, you'll glue the swing arm to it. Later on, you will then glue a piece on the back that keeps it in there. Otherwise, it just falls out off the sextant, but this is glued on the back, once again, very carefully, to keep that disc in the frame and properly attached to the swing arm. And after you get it together and let it dry a little bit, then make sure you move this swing arm. Make sure that it's moving, because if you glue it tight and it's not moving, then you've got a real problem. You're going to have to take it apart, and that's going to probably destroy your sextant. So you don't want to do that. So after you do that, then you're going to be making this little viewing box, which is the same as the telescope on a regular sextant. And what it is it's 2 pieces. Well, actually it's 8 pieces. This is another point I wanted to make to you. It's this one that I was talking about right here. You'll punch these out. They've got a hole in the middle of them. One has a large, 4 of them have a large hole, and 4 of them have a small hole. You glue them together, the 2 white pieces together, and then the black ones on the outside. Of course, all of them have to have the same hole. So 4 pieces will glue together in a thick little mounting bracket. The other 4 will glue together in a thick little mounting bracket. And you glue them right here on the sextant frame. Then one by one, after you get them glued on there, they've got little tabs that fit into the frame to hold them. Once you get them glued and they dry, then you'll put the covers on the viewing box. And the bottom cover has a spot where you can write your name, and they want you to take a black magic marker and paint it black on the inside. That is so that inside the viewing box everything is black, so you don't get reflections in there. It absorbs the light rays. You know, maybe it's a gimmick, I don't know, but they want you to have it all black inside there. So then you'll finish that up by putting all those sides on the viewing box, on those 2 sets of 4 pieces for the mounting bracket in there. Okay, so then you've done that. All right, then the next thing to do is these little frames for the mirrors. These also are made of 4 pieces that you punch out and glue together. You want to get them all perfectly lined up and glue them together. For this mirror here, the horizon mirror as well as the index mirror, just like on a sextant, an index mirror and a horizon mirror. You glue those frame members together, let them dry, then they fit in a groove. And once again, you want to, when you glue it to the swing arm up here, see how it's moving with the swing arm? When you glue this thing to the swing arm, you want to be careful you don't get glue once again on the frame, or else you may glue the swing arm to the frame, and you don't want that. Well, as you're getting ready to glue those, you want to take your mirrors and very carefully put them in there, put glue along the bottom, put it in there, and then you'll punch out some support brackets right here. Okay, continuing with this thing now. Yeah, you take the mirrors, put glue along the bottom edge, put them in there, mount the support brackets. They fit into a little groove here up against them, and secure them. Now you got to make them vertical. They've got to be perfectly perpendicular to the frame of the sextant. Well, how do you do that? I used a business card and ran the business card up against it to test it and make sure it was perpendicular. You may have a triangle or a little plastic triangle, something's perfectly square that you can put up against that. After you finish with that, then there's little support brackets, these right here, that you punch out and glue down there. But that's very easy to do. And every once in a while, refer to the picture to help you out. You can always call me on the telephone, of course, if you get stuck on some particular point. Okay, so then you'll glue these 2 mirrors on here with their supporting brackets and the supports on them. And then it's simply a matter of putting the handle on. Once again, the handle is made of 4 different pieces that you glue together to make a thick handle. And the mounting brackets for the handles are 4 pieces that you glue together. So when you read the instructions, well, okay, they're written in kind of a stilted fashion, not like you or I would write. So they can be a little confusing to follow. But actually, when you get it done and you look back on it, it's quite simple. These mounting brackets for the handle fit into grooves on the back of the sextant. There's one other piece here that goes around the filter bracket that you glue on. And then you're just about ready to go into the process of calibrating the sextant. And we'll talk about that for a second. But before we do, let me just mention, here is the filter, and you want to make sure that it slides in easily into the sextant. If it doesn't slide in, now you don't want it so easy that it falls out, but you want to make sure it slides in rather easily, kind of like that, so that you can put it in and take it out and it's secure. If it doesn't slide too easily, well, that's where you take your emery board and sand it off a little bit to get it to slide in and out of its bracket here. When you put this one on the back, it makes a groove in here that it slides into. Really kind of ingenious the way they did it. Okay, so now let's talk about how we finish up the sextant. You notice the swing arm here is loose. Well, that's obviously not right, and it has the degrees on the arc, but there's no minutes. So what do? Well, as you're reading the instructions, you'll see you have a little piece here for the minutes, but you've got to align the sextant, so to speak, to eliminate any index correction that may be required. Let me interrupt here just a second. When you're mounting the index mirror, now follow this very, very closely. When you're mounting the index mirror, you're going to do exactly, you will not understand it in the instructions, I guarantee that. So listen to me closely. It's in the instructions, but you will not understand it. I barely understood it, and I've been doing this for a while. But it's the same correction, the same alignment technique we use on a regular sextant. What you're going to do is you're going to hold the sextant up with the index mirror right near your eye, and you're going to look across the body of the sextant to right over here. You're going to look right across the sextant to this point. Simultaneously, and this is the tricky part, you're going to be looking in the mirror at the reflection of this part of the arc. Okay, so you've got to move the index arm over to a point. For me, it's right here, and that's about 37, 38 degrees on the arc. You want to move it over here, look across the sextant. In the mirror, you'll see this part over here, and then you'll see with your, that is my dog trying to get into this room. You little son of a gun. Okay, after that brief interruption, let's continue. You're looking across the body of the sextant. You're seeing this part of the arc, and then in the mirror, you're seeing this part of the arc. And these two places have to line up horizontally. If they don't, while the mirror is still a little wet, you got to move the mirror here. On a regular sextant, we turn the screw knobs, but on this one, you've got to do this correction while the mirror has not, before the mirror has dried. You want to move it back or forward a little bit so that those two sections of the arc line up. Where those two sections of the arc line up. It's kind of hard to explain, it's kind of hard to visualize, but when you get your sextant, just start looking through here until you can see both sides of this arc. Once again, like I said, it's about 37 to 40 on the index arm, and I can see this point and this point, and I want to make them flat together. I want to make them perfectly horizontal. That's a very important adjustment to this index mirror. Okay, it tells you very quickly if it's not perfectly perpendicular to the sextant. Okay, so do that. All right, now let's get back here to the swing arm and installing the minutes. Okay, what you're going to do is you're going to take the sextant outside. If you can, go to the beach with it. And you want to look at a distant horizon. You want to look at a distant horizon. Put the swing arm down here to 0, close to 0, because you don't have anything here to tell you it's on 0, except 0 on the arc. So just get 0 in this window. Be looking through the sextant at the horizon. Then you want to adjust. The horizon will not be lined up. Just as those 2 points didn't line up, the horizon will not line up unless for some reason you did a particularly good job putting it together. But what you want to do is move the swing arm enough that horizon lines up. Now, when you do that, then you want to hold it right there. Now, I don't know if you can put a clothespin there, or you can take the glue and the minutes with you and do it. But somehow you don't want to move the sextant once you get the horizon lined up. Okay? At the same time, and this is once again in the instructions but a little difficult to understand, you want to, you'll see on the sextant here a little arrow. A little arrow is right here, printed on the sextant. What you want to do is take your thin, your small velvet tip marker and make a mark, a straight line, just 1/8 of an inch long, on this mirror, on the left edge. In other words, you want to take your felt tip marker and make a little mark right here, about 1/8 of an inch long, perfectly level with that arrow. It's pointing, you know, in a direction. You want to make that little mark. That is going to be a horizon indicator mark for you when you're using your sextant. So you want to do that. Actually, you should do that before you go outside or go to the beach. Make that little mark, and it only has to be 1/8 of an inch. And in fact, you may have to wipe it off with some acetone if you don't have it in exactly the right spot. But then when you're at the beach and you're looking at the horizon, or it needs to be at least a mile away. If you can go out in the street and look at some flat, the ridge line of a roof a mile away, that should do it. But you want to have something that's perfectly horizontal a mile away. The horizon is the best thing, of course. So you're looking at the horizon and you want to see the horizon line up perfectly flat in the mirror and outside the mirror, and also line up with that little mark you made. If it doesn't line up with that little mark, after you've moved the swing arm and made sure it lined up together, you're going to have to remove that little mark and do it over again where it perfectly lines up. So you want 3 things to line up. You want the horizon reflected in the mirror, and you want the horizon that you see outside the mirror, and then you want to see it line up with the little black mark 1/8 of an inch long that you've made on this horizon mirror. You want those 3 things to line up. Now, after you get them all lined up, you look down here. Once again, you don't move this after you get them lined up. You don't want to move that swing arm. Then you want to take your minutes scale, put it behind it, and glue it on there. And when you glue it, you want to line up the 0 on the minute scale with the 0 on the sextant. Now your swing arm may not be perfectly in the middle. It may be off. Your sextant may have an inherent correction error. But that's really unimportant as long as you get this minutes scale glued on there, perfectly matching the two zeros together. You glue it on there. I haven't done it to this one yet, but that's the process I will go through. Then there are two more pieces to put on the back of this swing arm. You put this on there to support this, just to keep this thing on there, and then finally a bigger piece like this that slides, that glues over the whole thing and supports the back of the swing arm in this fashion. And then you're done. Your sextant's ready. They provide you with instructions on how to use the sextant and a formula. It's actually not the one I use. I find their formula a little confusing, but it works perfectly fine. And they provide you the declination of the sun from, I think it's 2004, which will get you there in a pinch. The minutes will be off a little bit, but not that far off. You can certainly use that. So the instructions on how to use it are really not too bad. The only thing they do not show you, and at least I haven't found anywhere in the instructions, is how to read the sextant. So let me tell you how to do that. When you move the swing arm and obtain your sextant height, of course, you'll have the 0 mark on your minute scale will mark the degree. Let's say it lines up with 30 degrees on here. All right. Now it probably won't match up exactly with 30. It'll be between 30 and 31, let's say. Then, just as on a regular micrometer on a sextant, you look along the scale for where it lines up with another point, with another degree mark. You look for where one of the minutes lines, or one of the minute lines on this little scale lines up with a degree. And where it lines up perfectly, though there should only be one, the rest of them will all be off a little bit. But one of them here will line up with another degree mark. And that, where it lines up, you read the degrees. You don't read you read the minutes. You don't read those degrees. You read the minutes off this scale, the one that lines up with another degree. For example, let's say this lines up perfectly with the 0 mark on 30. Well, the answer then is 30 degrees. But if it's just a little bit off of 30, for example, towards 31, let's say it's halfway between 30 and 31. The 0 mark on this little scale is halfway between 30 and 31. Well, then you look on this scale here that you've glued on here for a minute mark that lines up with another degree. And it should be the 30-minute mark should line up with another degree. If the 0 mark is halfway between 30 and 31 degrees, then the 30-minute mark, which is of course half a degree, should line up perfectly with one of the other degrees on the arc. So that's how you do that. Once again, if you have questions, send me an email or give me a phone call and I'll try to explain it to you. You want to glue your filter on here. I've used one of these before, and this filter is super dark, but it's the only one they give you, so you have to make do with it. Of course, if you shoot in the sun, always punch in your filter. You don't want to be looking at the sun without having a filter on there. So I'm looking forward to getting my minutes glued on here, the swing arm finished, and trying it out. But that's how you do it. I hope I was helpful. They work well. I've used one before, and it wasn't properly aligned, unfortunately. But it seems like they'll certainly do the job for learning celestial navigation. Now, this is not something you could put in your life raft and use in an emergency situation out on a life raft. For one thing, you got to glue it together. So, are you going to have glue out there? I doubt it. Number two, it's not going to be able to withstand any sort of weather. So, it's really for you to practice with while you're learning celestial navigation and deciding if you know you want to continue with it and make the investment on a plastic sextant, which are perfectly good, or make the big leap to a metal sextant. So good luck putting one together. It you know, if you don't count the glue time, I think I could put one together in probably a couple hours without having to glue it. You know, just sanding things off and sticking it on there and all of that. So there's not that much to it. You certainly can do it, and I hope this video you'll find beneficial. Thank you. Come here, Mickey. Say hi to everybody. Hi.